All right, then. Let's do it. Let's talk
Yes.
some fishing. Before we get
Yes.
into the actual topic, Tim,
Yes.
I want people to go over to the real, like if you're catching this on the split, go over to the full video, the full podcast on YouTube, because we just talked about a bait shortage in Minnesota. And if you're not from Minnesota and you're seeing the same things, very interested about those other places in the country. I assume you're mostly just listening in the United States. Well, the statistics say you're mostly listening in the United States. I want to hear if you guys are experiencing anything like that too. Like are you seeing bait shortages and stuff in your local shops? Let us know.
Yeah. And if you are or if you aren't, are you using the same bait as us? What are you working with?
Yeah.
Where are you at? You know?
Yeah. Like, do you go and buy live crawdads? Put them on? Is that a thing?
Right. Are you in a part of Montana where you only fish streams and for whatever reason they have like 8 different kinds of bugs for you to buy? Is that a thing?
Dude, I never thought about that. That's a wild thought for me.
I have heard of them talking about like buying like different bugs that are sold like in Wisconsin even. And it made me think of all the different areas where, they're talking about match the hatch and
right.
You're in rivers and streams and that's what they're using. Yeah. I know that there's spots in Wisconsin that have sold different kind of larvae that I haven't seen here in Minnesota. And I was like, whoa, for real, they have that? And then my mind was just going, what else does people have? I said it like that in my head too. What else does they have?
Yeah, dude, that's really got my mind going. Okay. Yeah, that's right. This topic here. We're talking about the weather. So if you're new to the Real AF TV podcast, we do these, like last episode 83, kind of do these dives into things that require a lot of research and stuff like that. And then we just do some conversational fishing topics too. It's education topics and stuff like that just end up kind of conversational education. But this one, conversation. There's bound to be some education.
Kind of a conversation of just like what's about to happen, what we think about to happen, what we gonna do about it.
Yeah, this is like some commentary type shit or something. I think, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the weather, Tim. 2024 ice season. R.I.P. Deuces to that shit.
Later, friend. I mean, you barely were here. You were there. You were just kind of like in the background. You're like, yeah, it's a thing. Maybe. I'm thinking about it.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm scared. So if you're listening to this at a different time or if you're from a different location, this has been the weirdest winter I don't remember anything like this.
No.
Ever. I remember there not being much snow. I remember there not being like having early ice out.
Yep.
The edges of the lakes that I'm driving past because of last week are starting to open up.
Yeah.
Which is something that has only happened like in my lifetime, late March.
Yep.
Like March is when they start saying you have to pull your permanents off the lake.
Right.
I have not seen a permanent hit the water this year.
I haven't even seen permanents on the lake.
Not at all.
Nope.
It's the weirdest shit I've ever seen because it was warm. So it froze. Then it thawed out completely. It like people were ice fishing.
Yep.
Then it got really warm and it melted completely. And it's like, oh shit, that was weird. Then it froze again. So we're like, all right, now you can ice fish again. And then it's above freezing, like 24/7 for like the last week again.
Yep.
and the edges are starting to open up.
Yeah.
So it's almost a Super Bowl. Normally we have like a shit ton of snow. That's the other thing. Like snow's normally on top of the ice,
Yeah.
where it's a little bit of insulation and it's taking a while to do everything.
Yes.
And now it's just my wife was just telling me this tonight that her friend from work,
Mm-hmm.
her boyfriend and his family or something, I don't really know who is all out there.
Mm-hmm.
But they're on Red Lake up north, which is a ways up there. It's a big time ice fishing destination.
I was just going to say that. That was the part I was going to say. That is known as someone who doesn't even like ice fish a ton or doesn't even travel north necessarily to go fishing unless we've made a special occasion out of it. I know Red Lake. And I mean, that podcast has a lot to do with it, but yep.
Sure.
I have a Red Lake story too, a little bit. So keep going. Sorry.
No, it's fine. They're up there and they're already on the ice, and the resort that they got onto where they have access to the water, those people said that it got cold again after it got warm, and it's like causing some cracks on the road where they normally go. And everybody on the ice should just hold tight. Don't try to drive onto the water. And they said, everybody hold tight. Do not try to use this access until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Oh.
And it's like, just like, if you're out there, you're out there. If you're in here, you're in here.
Yeah.
And they have people that were like going to meet them there tonight. And those people are just going to be like on the shore, just being like, how's fishing?
No.
You know, probably something like that. I don't know. But they said if you need to, if it's an emergency or whatever, like use this path.
Yeah.
Because that's where we see it's the best. But yeah, at night when it's dark and you can't really see stuff and everything, like,
no way.
So that's another thing that I never really thought about. See, it got hot and then the ice got shitty. And now that it got cold, it's doing the whole growing and kind of tightening up and stuff. And the ice actually, as it freezes, kind of expands. So it's like cracking in weird spots and doing stuff that it normally doesn't do as much because it's just a weird ass winter.
Right. The way it's behaving is just like throwing everybody off. I've heard similar things.
Normally in past years, so I'm a delivery driver. I'm out on the road all the time. If we get some like precipitation and it's wet and it just happens to be hot that day and then it gets cold and it's icy. Yeah. The only spots that are free of ice are where they put salt down for months. Right. There's not shit anywhere. There's no ice. There's no snow. It's dry. It looks like it feels like it's fall because it's cold as hell. Yeah. Still, or
early spring, which is like when I say I've already been calling it basically.
Yeah. When I say cold as hell, I mean it's super warm for this time of year. But we're still like lows of like 30s, highs of like highs are sometimes getting into the 50s, which is like, what the fuck? It's 50 degrees. That does not happen here. It's weird as shit. Yeah. Sometimes you get like one day and everybody, like in Minnesota, on a normal day on a weekend when it hits 50 degrees and there's like good ice, good chance you're going to see somebody out there with their shirt off.
Boom. Yeah. Out ice fishing with their shirt off.
Yeah, exactly. But this year it's like, we're all like spoiled. Yeah. And I mean, just today it got down to like 30 with higher winds. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. Oh, yeah. What the fuck is going on here?
Right. I know. Yeah. Same. The fam was walking into Target and it was like 28 degrees, but it must have been like 10, 15 mile an hour winds. We were just like, whoa. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, good thing I put my coat on and I'm wearing a hoodie with the coat on. I'm like, what the fuck? In February, I'm usually just in my coat.
For sure. I have like thermals that I wear and like thick socks and stuff. I had to wear that shit for 1 week so far this year. 1 week got cold enough. Yeah. Everything else has been warm. This whole last week with sunshine and stuff, I was driving around with the heat was on, but no sweatshirt. Just in in a t-shirt doing my
Damn.
job because I could get away with leaving the truck, doing my thing and coming back because it was nice enough out
Right.
for that, moment
Yeah.
of leaving the heat. It was fine. It's perfect.
And you're moving around and lifting
Oh yeah,
packages and stuff
I'm
like
keeping
that. So it's
active.
all,
That's the thing. Yeah.
yeah,
If I
like
was
you're keeping the blood flowing too. So
right.
yeah. And that week that you were talking about where it got cold, like where it actually got cold, I remember distinctly going, okay, here's winter. There's going to be, there's still an ice fishing season. Like it's still going to be
Right.
there. Like, I don't know if we had that conversation on the podcast or not, but I remember having that thought,
I
but
think kind of.
it was super cold. It got cold. It was a heavy hit. Like we got winter.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was very cold
Yeah,
there was for that 1 week. There was only a couple of days where it went above zero.
that's right.
There was a good stretch where it was like below zero every day, some wind in some of the mornings. And it's just like, damn, dude. Like I knew we had it too good for too long. And then it was just that 1 week. And then we're
Yep.
like, for real?
Right. It's usually the
crazy.
opposite of what we're getting now, where we get this 1
Yeah.
week of like high 40s or something like that, and it just drops back off.
Exactly.
But now, like, so we had that week. And I just also want to say this, like, holy shit, dude, what a change from last year. I mean, last year we had almost too much snow for the ice to freeze,
I
and
was
the
gonna
wind
say.
was nuts. And like, yeah, we're making excuses in quotes, but I mean,
Yeah, no, this is 2 years in a row where I haven't done a lot of ice fishing. Because last year it was hard to get on the ice because it was another snowstorm every time. Like
Yeah.
every weekend, it was like another snowstorm. It was like,
Felt
all
like
right,
it
this
for
weekend
real.
hits, we're going to go out there.
Yep.
It really was. Like every single time that it was, it's like another 2 or 3 inches. It was a lot of snow everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't get to do any of the pre-spawn crappie fishing last year.
Right.
Because it dumped so much snow and it stayed cold for so long that everybody was ice fishing later in the year. And we were kind of like, is it going to thaw out by the time
right.
that fishing opener comes? And then all of a sudden it was like 80 and we're like, it's crappie spawn already. Just we skipped pre-spawn completely. It is time for the spawn.
Just like,
you're like,
it was just like,
okay.
on.
Yeah.
And we're going to come back to crappie spawn for sure, because we got to talk about what we think is going to happen this year. But before we do that, I want to go back and second that I was driving around looking at small ponds. Some are completely thawed. Edges are gone for sure. Puddles of water on top of the ponds that still have ice.
Yeah, that's the other thing. All the rain.
Yeah, because there's just puddles sitting on top of now, and they're like, it's almost as if that the water is like trying to eat the ice instead of the ice melting into the water. It's fucking weird looking.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, because that's what you get when it rains on the ice, like late spring. Normally, when it starts thawing, you start getting those rain showers, and it looks weird because you're like, "Is the water open?" And it's like, no, there's ice there still, but it's just like water on top of the ice.
Mm-hmm.
And for a little while there, like it was raining good.
Mm-hmm.
We got a good, 24 hours. Like it felt like the whole state was just getting rained on.
Yeah.
And then you look at all the water or all the ice, and it's just crazy. And I keep seeing like sticks on the ice, like where people are marking the holes.
Oh, really?
But it's like Bigfoot. It's like I keep looking at it and just like I think somebody was here.
Really?
Yeah. it's more of like I don't look at it and be like, do I think that something, like a mythical creature was here? It's more just like there's evidence that something I think was here. I think somebody was there.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't believe it.
I don't
think you were out there.
For reals though. Like it is to that point. So I even drove around and looked at some bigger bodies of water, and I was just like, first of all, dead. anywhere you can get on there has been like roped off.
Oh yeah.
Anything that you can have a hint of, that's usually a hopping spot. There's not even a hint of somebody being out there recently.
Right.
This was kind of when it was raining, like it was on one of the rainy days, or like as the rain, the long rain was fading out this day,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. I actually saw 2 cars in one of the public access parking lots.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? So I drove up to there. I drove up to like the landing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Looked out. It's like, there's no. Those motherfuckers commuted to work today. It was somebody else.
Right.
They're using it as free parking.
Right. Or it's got like, you just didn't look close enough. There's like chalk in the window. It's just like, you have to move your car. You can't just leave your broke down car here.
Right. Yeah. It could have totally been that. Because I did have focus on the lake the whole time, where I was just like, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Dude, you know what the other thing I was thinking of, though, that's absolutely insane to me? If this ice, if it warms up and the ice opens, we could potentially be open water fishing for walleye in 2024 before the cutoff of when you can fish for walleyes again.
Holy shit, dude.
We could be
that is the fucking craziest thing out of this.
I know.
I did not cross my mind.
You could go out there and fish for walleye until March. And if it warmed up again, I mean, it's the first week of February and the edges are opening up.
Yeah.
If it warms up next week into like the 50s again,
yeah,
we could potentially see open water, and we could go open water fishing for walleye for a couple weeks. And then they'd be like, okay, now you can't again for like 2 months.
Right. For like 2 or 3 weeks or whatever that is. That's like 2 or 4 weeks that they shut it down for. That is so fucking crazy to think about, dude.
I forget when the cutoff is. We talked about that, right? It's like
we've talked about it before, and I think we found the conclusion, and I forget what podcast that was, but it was one of our ice fishing ones. There's not many, so you could scroll through the backlog and find it. But
it's right around the same time when they say that you have to get your permanents off.
Yes. Yep. It is.
Yeah.
It's really they're very closely tied to each other. So I want to just quickly throw numbers out for people who are listening. This is still winter in Minnesota. And yeah, we live in like the central southern sort of part of Minnesota. But it's this warm all over. There's still some ice fishing happening up north, I guess.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's out there for sure.
Yeah. And here's and it still gets cold enough. It still gets below freezing at certain parts of the day. But here's the catch. Here's the like numbers to it. And I'm not like, I didn't average out the weeks past or anything like that. But here's the thing. First of all, it gets into the 50s it gets into the 50s or close to the 50s for the high during the day.
Yeah.
The sun has been getting stronger since basically Christmas, right?
Yep.
Even though January is usually the coldest month, that fell flat on its fucking face. And we got very little ice out of that.
Right.
It was open, like leading into the holidays, because I actually have, so there was someone at daycare that had a upper Red Lake trip planned for over the holidays, because they get the holiday weeks off.
Yeah.
Couldn't go because they wanted to bring their big trailer like permanent up there. Set it down for a few weeks.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple of lakes around here that I wanted to go take a cast in just after New Year's, because I wanted to be able to say that I casted in the open water in January.
Yep.
Like there was still open water in January. Then it froze over and it got hot right away again. So it was like that 1 week of extreme cold that gave us ice, but besides that, we barely have any ice,
Right.
and it's starting to disappear again.
Yeah.
And it's just,
It didn't
it's,
even really get thick enough. Now, I'm sure there's spots out there, where people are driving and all this other stuff, but I think me and you both have already said, like,
yeah.
hell no. Yeah, there was
Well,
enough ice to
I
feel
mean,
comfortable walking.
yeah. If
But-
you're not familiar with what it's like around here, think about this on how the temperature works. When it snows here, it doesn't melt because it doesn't get warm enough to melt. So we'll get snow, and then you just have to push it off your driveway, and then it keeps gathering up until the end of like everybody's driveway has enough snow that everybody's making forts in it. And there's just like these giant, like there's certain spots where you go that the visibility is hard to, like the intersections. You can't really see where you're going some spots because there's snow piles that are so high.
Yeah.
And this year, it's
Zero.
almost impossible to find snow.
Yeah.
There are some spots where it got pushed into a hill, and like late spring, you'll get these piles that have melted down to like where all the dirt was pushed together. So you just see these mounds of black that are technically like, yeah, that's like ice and snow, but you
It's
can't really
dirt.
tell because
It's dirt.
the
and
dirt,
tar.
every time it melts, the dirt just gets more and more concentrated until you just
Right.
got this lump of black.
Yep.
So yeah, it's like, it's absolutely insane. I'm looking at my yard, like it's February.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to like mow the yard? I don't know what to
Does
do
the lawn
right
need
now.
to be mowed? I'm not sure.
The ground is like soggy as my grass getting
Right.
and then looking at the one side of my house, like every once in a while I look at it and I'm like, is that grass longer? Like,
Yeah.
legitimately, am I supposed to mow right now? I
Right.
don't know what to do.
Uh-huh.
This is the most confusing shit
It
I've
is.
ever
And-
seen.
And the snowpack is, like you said, is the perfect kind of thing of like where I was going with no numbers or anything like that, is that it now gets up to 50 something, and then it'll get down to like 31. So it
Right.
freezes overnight, but it loses more in the heat of the day
Yeah.
than it can grow back overnight. And a big reason of that is there's no snowpack to reflect the snow back, the sun back into the sky. There's no
Yeah.
snowpack to keep the air cool down near the ground. The ground is absorbing the heat now at this point.
Right.
The ground is
and there was-
radiating heat to keep
Yeah.
this warm air warm.
And there was like, even like later spring, a lot of days it does get warm and then it drops in temperature again. So it does freeze overnight. Like you were talking about this last week,
Mhm.
it didn't go below freezing, even at
Didn't.
night.
No.
It was above freezing around the clock.
Yep.
which
For
is
I don't know how many
absolutely-
days, but at least 5. I'm thinking closer to 8.
Absolutely unheard of
Oh,
for
yeah.
around here.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I'm sure that they could find some shit because, that's one of the things that I always think is funny, where everybody freaks out and they're just like, global warming, climate change, all this other stuff. And it's just be like, yeah, I'm sure some of that's happening. But every single time we're like, did we break a record? They're like, yes, we broke a record that was set in 1915.
No, right.
And, we did this that was happened in 1915. This happened in 1915. And you're like, so over 100 years ago, all this shit happened once before. So we're
Right.
just having a crazy fluke thing. And it's not like this is unprecedented. But I mean, this year definitely kind of feels like it. I would be willing to say that, like, when all is said and done,
Oh yeah.
this is going to be like the warmest winter
Oh,
we've
this
had
will
on
crush.
record.
Yeah, this is going to
It's-
crush. It already is. So when I watch the meteorologists in the morning, they're already looking at that and at the records, like each month as we get out of January, they're showing what January was, and then they're showing what February is, and they're showed what December was, and they're just like, oh yeah, this is just like way way up there. That's why we're doing this on February. It's going to launch on February 12th. This podcast is going to launch on February 12th.
This
And the
weekend-
headline is
yeah,
"R.I.P. Ice Season 2024. It's
Yeah.
no way can we recover from it at this
When
point. I
you
just
hear
don't think we
this,
can.
yeah, when this podcast airs, it is the day after the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
which is there's supposed to be crazy snow. We could go outside and play football right now, which is like,
Right.
yeah, you'd be able to do that before, but it was in boots and snow pants. Everybody be
Yeah.
running slow and stuff.
Yeah.
We bought a new sled because we found this sick sled, and we're like, eventually we will have snow to sled
Yep.
down a hill. Nope. We don't have shit. So we have a new sled. I bought a new shovel too. I was like, that's gonna happen. I repaired my lawnmower. I brought it to like a professional, and I'm like, if it's like last year, I need this thing running in tip top shape
For winter. Yep.
And so far this year, I've just spent money where I'm just like, well, that was fucking stupid. Same thing with my wife's car. Like, went and got like nice tires that, like, nice tires aren't a bad thing. You should have them, but like, I got like a good all season. Like,
Yeah.
those things look like they're going to be crazy good in the snow. And she struggled last year. There was multiple times that she got stuck in our driveway last year, just trying to get into the house.
Yeah.
This year,
we had a crazy large amount of snow last year.
It was a crazy year. Yeah,
I
definitely.
get what you're saying.
But this year, there was one time I used the snowblower, and I didn't even need to. It wasn't even enough snow for it, really. It was just because I had my snowblower fixed, and I'm like, we got to see how this treks out.
Gotta check it out.
That was literally the only time that I could have used it. There's been nothing else besides it.
There was one time I was at work. I went into the office. My wife was like, I was restless, and so I just shoveled the driveway. And I was like, but did you really need to? She goes, no, I just wanted something to do.
Right.
And it was just, I came home and I saw, and she just had used the shovel to push the fluff. Like, there was no shoveling. It was used as a plow.
Oh yeah. Just pushing it around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just pushed it from one side to the other, and went back in a row and did rows. And yeah, cleared the driveway. She could have done it with a fucking broom.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's how little snow we've gotten down here, just a few miles south of you. It's a decent amount of miles, but it's not that much.
Right. No, yeah, not really. I mean,
we usually have the same weather. It's like one of us will get clipped by the heavy stuff every once in a while, but we're close enough where we usually have nearly the same weather.
Yeah. And I don't think you're not really that much south, are you?
No.
Because you're like southwest, so it's not that far south.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, but, yeah. And that's why I was willing. I was like, dude, we're just going to talk about like,
hell yeah,
rip to the hard water season. And like, I don't think that we're going to be able to get back from this. Now, so one of the meteorologists said you could actually start to see green grass and stuff like that popping up. This was 2 weeks ago already. So I mean, I think it's happening.
Yeah.
And also, he said, it's going to get cold again. So when it freezes, what's going to happen? And yep, it's freezing overnight. So if anybody like had plants popping up and shit like that, that's going to be a problem. The grass is going to survive. But, I heard that people were seeing flowers bud and stuff like that. And it's like, we're supposed to be talking about, hey, can we get out? Let's talk about some ice fishing tips. And now we're sitting here going, you really need to watch the ice safety this year. Like, really close. Really pay attention to your local, hyper local ice safety. Find everything you can out before you go out there, because this is nuts.
And maybe, like me, just get ready for that open water season.
Yeah.
I have pretty much just said that the ice season is a wash. If it gets cold again and it freezes and people are telling me that there's like a decent amount of ice, then I'll shift gears. But for right now, it just feels like it's all going to disappear.
Right.
And I'm here for it because I wanted to get more well-versed in the pre-spawn crappie anyways. Because, I mean, it was just a couple of years ago, we've talked about it on the pod too, where I really started getting more into ice fishing and then started learning like, oh, these
Mm-hmm.
crappies are just kind of like suspending in the deepest areas,
Right.
where they're just kind of like in the middle of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're going from where they're going to be in the middle of nothing to where they're going to go to spawn.
Mm-hmm.
And the spawning is going to be happening, in the shallow bays and the coves, depending on your area,
Mm-hmm.
or like the big, in like natural lakes and stuff, like the one that I fish a lot. They're just in the big reed beds, because the reeds themselves are like a shelter from the water current and everything, which is what they're
Mm.
basically looking for, is
Right.
a space where the current's not going to fuck with their nest,
You're right. Mm-hmm.
So there is a transition period from where they're in their winter area to when they go to their spawn. Well, like last year, that was like a week. It was like, it's cold, now it's warm, and they just moved up.
Yeah.
And now this year, it's like, what happens? Does the ice go away and they stay where they're at out in the deep water?
Right.
Because they're like, yeah, whatever. Or do they feel it warming up a little bit? I'm assuming that they're just going to be in the middle someplace. And it's just going to be a kind of a guessing game. And you
Yeah.
just, you're really going to need electronics to figure this one out. So it's going to be, I am
And reading that
very,
temperature, right? Don't you think that reading the water temperature is going to be
water temperature
real
is
key
huge
to
because
that?
water temperature is huge because water temperature is what dictates when they actually move up.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have like an internal temperature gauge
Mm-hmm.
when they're just like, it's a little bit chilly, I think. And then as soon as it hits the right temperature, they're just like, oh, I'm ready. Oh, did you guys feel that sunshine today?
Right.
I'm gonna fan a space and get me a lady, dude. That sunshine got me in the mood, buddy. I am ready to roll. So like, it's something. It's funny because it's literally, there's that range of temperature,
Mm-hmm.
and they just know when it hits it. I I don't know if there's something that they just, they're like that old man that's just like, I can feel it in my bones. It's gonna rain. It's just like they just know when to move up. They're like, yeah,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
Can you not feel that? Clearly, it's time for us to make babies.
Clearly. Let's go.
Yeah, just yeah, it's time.
The old like lick the finger, check the wind thing.
Yeah, checking the wind. Of course, it's time for us to go up so we can get down. You know what I'm saying? But
Nice.
but there's that transition period, and it's just going to be a real trying to like find out where they're at. So you're gonna have to have electronics for the most part. Like I'm sure you could do it without electronics, but it's going to be like find a spot, cast it out where you think it would be,
Mm-hmm.
and then chill. But you're also going to have to know
Almost like
the
ice
depths.
fishing, but with just open
Yeah.
water, right?
Exactly. And how I was talking about like how for the longest time I was using that GPS.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that GPS will tell you about where you're at, and you're going to have, you can see where the spawning ground is. You can see where you would think that there would be a path
Mm-hmm.
from where they're at the winter to where they would move into their shallow spot to spawn.
Oh, interesting.
And some of it too, depending on the area of the lake, those main lake areas where, like, if you go on YouTube and you watch the episode, or like when we were out there fishing live,
Oh,
Josh
yeah.
was, so I had my little tiny boat, and I was on the one side of the lake where they hadn't quite moved up yet.
Mm.
I bet you if I could have made it to the opposite side of the lake,
Mm-hmm.
where there's like a smaller sheltered bay
Mm-hmm.
that has darker bottoms and the water heats up and stuff there, I bet you the crappie were in there.
We're in that one.
And maybe not all the way up into the shallows spawning, but like in the middle of it, The weeds haven't
where you could
grown up yet.
have played it, like you could have played the shallow, or not the shallow game. You probably would have played deep to shallow, where you would have like picked a
Yeah.
spot and then moved it like from a deeper water into a shallow, or I guess you could have went shallow out to deep too.
Yeah. Well, I
But
mean,
you
when
would have
they're
moved,
moving,
right?
when they're in there spawning,
Mm-hmm.
it would, most of the time, like you can see them. So it would have been like, just go in, look in the
Oh, so you're
shallows. I
saying you
don't
think that
see
they
the,
were actually up spawning
no,
on that side?
I think they were in where they would have spawned, and there's a chance that they were up spawning, but they would have been in the deep part of that hole,
Gotcha.
just ready to go. Where
Right.
like when we filmed it, I would have had to go onto the main lake a little bit more, which was less sheltered from the wind. So
Yep.
part of the reason I didn't try that was because of the mics
The
and stuff,
mics. Yeah.
where I was just like, but also I thought they would be up there, and I had a boat that can go like 5 miles an hour top speed. So I was
Right,
like,
right.
well, we're just gonna try here
Yeah,
and
yeah.
hope for the best.
It was a good
But
try. That no doubt
yeah,
about that. But
so but
yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like that's where they would have been. So they would have been just off of that. And I knew
Mhm.
I had like a week before it was gonna hit that. We got 2 months before they're probably in that spawning, like that time to move up to spawn.
Mhm.
So there's going to be this transition period of like, you really just got to get out there and try to figure out where they're at, because
Mhm.
they move in schools. So they shouldn't be that
Mhm.
hard to spot if you have decent electronics.
Mhm.
But there's a good chance that they're going to be moving during the day, that they start moving into the spawning, moving up a little bit
Mm.
when the sunshine
When
gets warm,
Mhm.
and it starts beating in, and the fish. I don't know how intelligent they are, or how good that like internal clock is, or whatever it is that tells them to move up.
Mhm.
I don't know if the sunshine comes out and that's enough for them to move up and then be like, feels like it could get warmer, and then
Mhm.
they just go, clearly not warm enough yet, we'll move back out. And if it's just a everyday
The float
move
thing.
in and move out and
Yeah.
move in and move out, or if they're just out in the depths and stuff. So this is what I've been wanting to figure out and
Right.
try to learn and really get a good grasp on, like trying to understand what they're doing. Can I go into a certain spot and be like, this is where they were yesterday, and then go back to that same spot and hit them again? Or is
Mhm.
it like, I got to move into the shallows, and then, as soon as the sun goes down, or even like cloud cover moves in, all of a sudden I got to move out another, 10 feet deeper or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't have these answers. I
Right.
know, I know their movements, and I know where they go and why they go there. I
Right.
just don't have any answers for what happens in this purgatory
Right.
between ice and spawning, because we don't always, like last year, have
Have an
a,
opportunity.
yeah, it's not that long of a time all the
Right.
time,
Well, and
you
this
know?
year too, like you're saying, is it might be a really long time, because you got to think about the fact that even though the ice, if it keeps going like this, the ice is gonna melt off, but
Yeah,
the temperatures are not going to just skyrocket like they did last year. We're
right.
still going to have these lower, days of sun and the lower
Yeah,
intensity of sun, and it's not going to just like take the water up like 5
right.
degrees over a weekend like it did last year or
Yeah,
whatever it was, where it just like set them off quickly. There could be a very long window here. And what does that
yeah.
mean though? Is that a
Well,
good thing? Is
yeah,
that a bad thing? And I don't mean good or bad, but does that help the pre-spawn fishing,
right.
or is it make it more difficult because they're not behaving they are
Yeah,
doing something different? I hope they look at this point. I'm with you. R.I.P. hard water. Get ready for
yeah.
open water,
I'm
and
ready.
I hope you can get out there and get the answers to all those questions, because you obviously have a lot of questions and are super curious about it. And I just sat there and just you rattle them off and go, yeah, man, what are they doing?
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
super curious.
yeah, and like I forget the exact temperatures, but I thought it was between like 55 and 65 degrees is normally when they spawn.
Mm.
And even if it stays where it's like hitting 50 in the middle of the day and it's dropping back down to 30 at night and this opens the ice, the air temperature isn't even hitting where it needs to be for them to spawn. So the
Right.
water temperature is not going to
It's
warm
not
up
going to
that
be
much.
there. Yeah, exactly.
So it's going to be like it's still that time of the winter, basically. Like
Mhm.
I'm assuming they're going to be kind of close to where they would be in the winter. But at the
Mhm.
same time, when the ice opens up, if the water just stays cold and the ice is open now, what happens when we start talking about current and stuff because of wind, which is something that they're
Oh,
not dealing with right now with ice? So
right.
there's a lot of questions I have where I'm just kind of curious on like, do they strap on the feed bags and they start changing up their
Right.
whole routine, but they're staying in the same spot? I don't know if they're just like, we're cool with not moving right now because we're used to not eating anything else right now, or
Right.
there's so many questions that I don't have good answers for, because on other years when the ice has opened early, even I haven't had the electronics or the ability to get out there and really try to figure it out. So hopefully this year I'm able to do that and really try to get a good grasp on what's going on,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And if anybody else has answers about that too, I mean, preferably if you live in an area where the ice goes out, even if you're like a little bit more south, where your ice goes out early, but it
Mm.
doesn't warm up enough to have them spawn early.
Yeah.
What are you dealing with right now? That might be the perfect person to talk to.
Yeah.
Somebody that's like in Iowa,
That's
where
what I
the
was going to
ice
say. Are
goes
there
out.
lakes in Iowa?
Yeah, where the ice goes out at the same time, but they're not spawning until later because they're dealing with 50-degree temperatures
Yeah,
every
because
day
you're right.
too.
The water temp would still. It's that whole thing, like you said. It's like 50 high during the day. 30. I don't know. 35 at night. It's not changing the water, but it will get rid of the ice. I mean, it's not
Right,
changing the water enough, but it will melt the ice. And that's like,
right.
here we are in February. Looks like that's what we're getting up against.
Yep.
I
Crazy stuff.
sure as hell hope you get out there. It's really funny. It's not really funny, I guess, but it's kind of a funny thing. You did not have that pre-spawn on your list of goals this year.
Yeah, and now
And now maybe there's an opportunity this year, but I think it was just so defeating last year. And we were
yeah,
trying
I
to be
mean it
more
was
realistic. Go listen to our goals episode. It's a good one.
right. Yeah, it was more of a just like maybe we're getting too far and we'll just roll with what we're given. And now maybe I'm given that opportunity, which would be super sick.
Yeah.
And also, please warm up and let me try to fish for walleye in the open water season now. Like I
I
gotta
would
go look in the books.
love that.
Like, is there even a rule about that? Yeah, I would assume that like as there even had to be talk about that
Right.
before,
Right.
where they're like in the circuit in the rare situation of open water in February,
Right.
you can't do this,
Right.
or as there ever is it literally just like there's never needed to be a rule about this before?
Right.
I
Uh-huh.
don't know,
I,
because they do spawn earlier. So if the water opens in February, the walleye might legitimately start trying to spawn way before they should,
right.
making it still be in the ice fishing season. And I don't know.
Oh, that's a good
maybe I
question
should go
then. Yeah. Because
maybe
that's
I
the
should go and
idea,
look in the
right?
book.
Is that go ahead.
Maybe there is some sort of a rule where they're just like, if ice opens and the water warms up,
Mm-hmm.
you still can't cast for them or something. I don't know, dude.
Yeah. I
I've
don't know
literally
either,
never
but
had to ask these questions.
I know it's actually really exciting to, because I didn't think about that before this episode, or I would have tried to do some research on it because I'm just thinking about it shutting down, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, okay, there's no opportunity to get out on the ice at the beginning of 2024 anymore. Any
Right.
chance of ice fishing is now going to be back down into the November, December area. And that idea that you've come up with the walleye makes my brain melt. but I get what you're saying. Like, to explain it in words, we're saying the reason that there is this break in the walleye season here, because walleye is like one of the most popular fish to fish for in Minnesota.
Yes.
It's literally a break to let them spawn.
Right.
Like
And because
that, from everything we can see, everything we can, short of talking to a DNR officer that knows the reason why the law was made, that's it. That's why there's a break in the walleye season. It's to let them spawn.
Right. And like if you're trying to catch them while they're spawning, I know that like they're kind of tired and they're kind of like lethargic after all the spawning is done. And I think if you're able to, like, if you catch one and you fight one, that they might not have the energy to like go and try to catch any bait fish or like any food for themselves. So I think you might be like, yeah, they need that time to recover. You need to give them their space to recover. You know,
right?
It's like if you went, you think about it like a lady, pregnant lady, has a baby,
right?
And then immediately after that, she needs some recovery time,
right?
And then instead, you walk in and you toss her a couple of boxing gloves, and you're just like, "We're about to fight." I'm guessing a couple of them aren't going to make it,
right?
Just like there's nobody there giving them food. I mean, you should think about it like that. If you came in and you boxed the lady, and then you were like, immediately after you worked her over a little bit, then you're like, go find yourself some dinner. I'm not going to be cooking you any food.
Right.
I told this guy not to help you.
Yeah. You're making a good point. And
it could be a real problem. So they normally don't do that. And normally the spawning period, they're just like, ice house is off by March. The ice is about to open up. We don't ice fish, or we don't fish for walleyes during this time, because the walleyes are going to be spawning, because this is when it warms up on a regular basis. This is what normally happens.
Right.
And now
water's open. We know that this is a multi-million-dollar fish, if not billion-dollar fish.
Right.
Let's do it. Get people out there as soon as possible.
And I should say, just like we've said many other times, go check your regulations. I'm going to, because I had the thought of like, oh, I can fish for the fish in open ice, because the regulations, normally state that this is when you cannot fish for them anymore.
Yeah, this is when it says
and it literally, as we were talking here, hit me. Maybe there is some sort of a stipulation of, in the circumstance of open ice,
right?
You can't.
Yeah, you said
it starts whenever the ice opens. So I'm just reiterating.
Yeah.
To make sure people know that. I don't want people being like, "Oh, they're officer." The podcast host clearly stated.
Right. Yeah. Definitely check the local regs. You're going to check the regs, report back, I assume, because this isn't the last time we're going to talk about this part of it, but it is like the end of the ice season. Like, that's it. That's the end of this. We'll wrap up here in just a second, but like, that's the end of this topic. That's the end of the ice season. There is there's no more direct ice conversation to be had. I don't think, in the 2024 season. It's just, that's it. Get ready for open water. read the regs.
Right.
It's
I would.
go time.
I was just kind of thinking to myself that it'd be funny too if somebody did the officer, clearly the podcast host stated, and then it'd just be like, you mean the same podcast host that like 5 minutes later said he was gonna box a chick and then tell her to go fend for herself? Box a pregnant lady and tell her to go find her own dinner? That guy? That's the one you were listening to?
That's great. Well, Tim, I don't think I have any more on that. I mean, that like I said, we'll wrap soon, but
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of the same stuff. If anybody's wondering, like, how would I fish these things? Go back and check out some of our other episodes. We talked about crappie fishing and stuff before. Crappie minnows, if you can find them, because we touched about on the bait. If the crappie minnows are out there when you got a chance to go get the crappie minnows, go get that. Same kind of jigs you would use in the spring when the water opens. Same everything. It's not going to be any different than any other time you'd be out there fishing, except for when the water is cold, you might have to slow down.
That's
to
right.
catch the fish.
Yes, you always say that, and thank you for the reminder, because I forget it too. It's just like technique. So don't be can make such a big difference.
Yep, exactly. Don't be casting out there thinking you can just like rip through certain areas. You might be able to find those fish, and it might, you might have to just put a jig on a bobber or a minnow on a bobber, and that's like your only option.
Mm-hmm.
Like jigging might be a little bit too fast, because when you're jigging through the ice, you're kind of vertical jigging. You're moving that jig a lot, but that jig is kind of sitting in the same spot, just kind of moving. I don't know if you can really get away with pulling it through a thing fast. They might turn to see it, and as it goes, they're all just like, holy shit, dude, that guy's lightning. I got no chance. You see that little guy?
This is the fastest human on earth right there.
That's the fastest kid alive.
Yep, that's what I was looking for. Fastest kid alive. Yep.
He's the fastest kid alive. Oh, he's the fastest kid alive.
You get it. So I was like, whatever. I'm just gonna throw it out there. That's the one. Oh, that was great. All right, Tim. We're gonna jump into the random take, but before we do, we have to take a break.
Hit
the break.